Hello everyone and welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Jessica Katanga.
Woke up feeling like I just might run for president, even if there ain't no precedent. Switching up the messaging.
Joining us on the 5th episode of Taboo, where I get real life people in to talk about conditions that are just not talked about enough. And today we have the lovely Sinthia. So Sinthia, could you introduce yourself?
I'm Sinthia. Hello. I have borderline personality disorder. So here I am. Working on my own music and things like that. So
Okay, fantastic. All right, so how we're going to kick off the episode is I'm just going to start with the scientific definition of borderline personality disorder, and then I'm going to ask you for a more personal one, okay? So borderline personality disorder is a personality disorder. So that means it affects the way that you think and feel about yourself and how you interact or think about situations and other people. Fear of abandonment, unstable relationships, unclear sense of self, impulsive or risky behaviors, self-harm, extreme emotional swings, chronic feelings of emptiness, explosive anger, and sometimes suspicion or dissociation. And they must be long-standing. Scientists are still unclear as to what the cause is, but the leading theory is childhood trauma or adversity.
I'd probably describe it as instability in mood, instability in relationships, friendships, and impulsive behaviors. So yeah, that's probably how I would categorize it. I've always kind of felt a type of way since I was a kid. Like I do remember always having these sort of feelings, and so I do think that there's a possibility that I was born with it, but I do feel like certain events in my life probably just made it worse. It's only until I got older that I was actually diagnosed with it, because I think they hesitate to diagnose people under 18 with it.
Okay, so you said that you felt a type of way. What did you think was happening?
I was kind of bullied and teased a lot as a kid, but I looking back, you do sort of think, oh, everybody has that. But I did feel like I wasn't able to ever get into the groups, like friendship groups and things like that. Like I did always struggle with it. And then when I got older, I found myself like, if I couldn't get what I wanted, I feel like I would just shut down, and I just wanted it all to be over, and I just thought that was that time. That kind of pattern just kept repeating, and I think when that pattern is just constantly repeating and nothing seems to change, you do start to see something's up,
So when you thought that something was up, then did you just go to the doctor straight away, or what did you do?
Yeah, so initially I went to the doctor when I was about 15, but that was because one of my friends from school told me that she thought that there was something different, like something had changed in me. And I think she thought that it was depression. And I think in school I was really energetic, and I was really out there and bubbly, and so when that kind of dropped, I think that's what she sort of meant. Even though in my life I know on a personal level that I've always had those dips, and the first doctor I went to thought that I had depression, and I would say that he was probably right, based on the information that I was giving him. But then I went to another doctor, and he said that Sri Lankan women don't have depression. So I think you're wrong. And so from then on, I just kind of felt like, oh, no one's gonna understand me, you know what I mean? So from year 7, I went to school counseling. I was sent to school counseling. I was then sent into CAMS when I was 15, after I went to the doctor initially. So it's kind of actually been ongoing for ages.
Yeah, but maybe did you think that it was just situational? So at counseling, you always had something that you were talking about that you thought was making you feel up and down?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do want to make a point of that, is that I only ever really get into these extreme moods if something triggers it.
And do you think that's the same for everybody with BPD?
I'm not sure. I think because I think where it gets a bit tricky is that people with BPD have problems with emptiness and boredom. And I've definitely had that. And I feel like, you know, when to other people, if it seems like there's nothing could have triggered me, for me, my trigger is the emptiness and the boredom. What happened is that I did end up overdosing on some paracetamol, and that was the first time I'd ever done anything like that. I think I'd self-harmed before, but it wasn't like taking pills. And when my family like got alerted to the fact that I'd done it, I had to go to hospital. And so that was what triggered getting into CAMS.
A lot of my audience are either current or future healthcare professionals. So advice you would give to us?
I think the only thing that I think looking back, which is something that, you know, later on I kind of identified as like a huge thing in my life, is that I never really spoke about like the cultural aspects of why certain things in my life are the way that they are. And so I think because they didn't have people who could understand that perspective, it was thrown a bit off, and it took me even longer to even recognize that those things were a factor, you know. Like I would have, you know, I'd speak about the fact that like for example, like my parents have an arranged marriage, like they didn't fall in love or anything. And I do think that that's affected the way that my relationships have panned out now.
Not only having a mental health journey, but being, in your case, South Asian with it as well, and the complexities or the added layers that comes on top of that. And I think that is why representation is so important, because I'm sure if you had a Tamil psychiatrist in front of you, or a Tamil psychologist, they would have just understood that arranged marriage is not this thing that many people maybe jump to. So did you find the diagnosis helpful or unhelpful?
I was actually really hesitant to even accept it. Like I was actually there with my mom, and I was just like, no, I think it's depression, or anxiety, just because those are like way more common, and like way more like I could talk to my friends about that, you know. Whereas like this was just like, whoa, like these are big words you're using. So
Yeah.
I just felt that yeah, I really wanted to reject the label, and I really wanted to be
Yeah.
like prove them wrong in a way and say, no, that's not me. Especially I'm so glad that now that I've learned that, you know, our brains are literally wired a different way, and you know, there are loads of neurodiverse people in the world, and it's okay. Like I think I just wanted so badly to be normal, or like, you know, but it's not my fault that my brain is different, like, you know.
Okay.
So I'm glad that I know that now, because in counseling and stuff like that, they always said to me like, you know, you can really like, you're really good at communicating how you feel, and like you're really good at like putting it into words. And I felt like they would always tell me that I was like a bright smart girl, and so it felt like for me to be a bright smart girl but also be emotionally unstable, like what is that like, you know. It made me feel like they felt like, you know what you're doing, you're just
Okay.
yeah. I don't know, I hope that makes sense to people.
No, that does make sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what you've described in terms of knowing how you feel and being able to communicate is called insight. So insight can be a double-edged sword, because insight can save you, and it means that you can know when to seek help. But then at the same time, you can feel like if I can reason, and if I know that this is happening, then I can stop it. But no, with that same insight, you still like, you're still not in control.
Yeah.
You are in yeah, like it's
Yeah.
still not your fault or anything.
Because like in the past I had a friend who said, well, you know what your diagnosis is now, so you should stop it. And I just I didn't know how to explain, like I really can't. I wish I could stop, but it's, you know.
The questions, how has it affected forming friendships and or relationships?
I think when, you know, you make friends and whatever, and you communicate to them that you have this disorder, it can go one of two ways. They can be like incredibly supportive and like really care about you, or they could be like, I'm out. bye. You know, especially with my family, it's they're very supportive, but like they don't get it. So because of the cultural stuff. So I tend to turn to my friends straight away. And when my friends can't handle it, or you know, it is difficult. And I've had friendships that are amazing and still thriving today, and like they are very aware of the fact that like I I'm a good person, I just have a different brain. Or like, you know, you know, it's like saying to an autistic person, stop being autistic, you know? It's literally a different connection in the brain. And, you know, I've had people say to me, well, it's just toxic because, you know, I need to care about myself, not you, kind of thing. And I do think in a way, like, I think we, as people, we should all be more empathetic and we should all hold more space for other people. There are a lot of people who will say, that we need to fight the stigma and mental health is so important, but then when you present a symptom that's not very pretty, they leave. And
No.
you know, and so
Yeah.
I think that if you're going to be about it and show
Yeah.
empathy to people. And I think with, you know, if you have a friend that has BPD and they're acting out or anything, just the main thing is just to like show them that you care about them and validate that their feelings are real. Like they might be extreme and they might be like over you know, the top, but they are still valid emotions. They didn't just come out of thin air. When BPD people have anger or like they're really upset and distraught, obviously that's one extreme, but then the other extreme is also really beautiful, because the other extreme is like you could feel extreme happiness and you could feel extreme like just me having a conversation on the phone to my one of my friends like makes me so happy. And so that other side of things is beautiful. And if you care about somebody who has BPD, you could be longer, it's like you could stay long around enough to experience that side too. I think if there's anybody with BPD watching and feels like they can't talk to someone or talk to one of their friends, I think that they should just say, I think that they should, you know, reevaluate.
Yeah. And okay, so really it's just finding out who your real friends are, and not being ashamed, and you're not a burden to your friends, and those who do really love you and want to put that time in will put that time in, and you will reciprocate that. So you've hinted at it before about the cultural aspect. You wrote a blog post for Gaudem a few years ago talking about being South Asian and having borderline personality disorder. So could we just explore more how being South Asian has impacted your mental health journey?
I think there are two different sort of factors, and one factor is like cultural and family. And I think that culturally and what my family knows, they just don't know about mental health as a thing. Like that's not something that is talked about, that is not something that is seen as an issue. Like in personally in my own family, um I know that there is a wide range of mental health problems, but nobody addresses it. They don't take it seriously. Like I was in a car with full of my aunties, and because another uncle of mine before pre-COVID also passed away from alcoholism. And I was explaining, you know, I think that these issues that come from trauma, being a refugee, leaving your country and leaving a war, like I think that these things manifest as alcoholism, and I think that it's something that we should all talk about. And everybody just said no, like they just drink to have fun, like it's nothing serious, it's nothing deep, even though somebody had just died. They didn't know this stuff growing up, and they're still wrapping their heads around it now. And so I have to sort of reconcile with that as well, and not just put all the pressure and stuff on them. And then with the other factor is how other people receive you when you're not just a person of color, but a person of color with a mental health disorder. Because you know, I am a passionate person, but I think that my BPD makes me a bit more passionate than maybe most people. And that passion has been received mostly as aggression in those spaces, you know, because I think it's like already hard for them to wrap their head around the fact that I'm like ethnic, but then they're also like, oh, she's a bit much, like she's like a bit. Yeah, so when I speak up about things that I know is wrong, I'll often get the response of like, no, you're the one that's wrong because you have BPD. So obviously not everything that you think is going to be right. Yeah.
So it's weaponized against you rather than sympathy. So important that when we're talking about these mental health things, we also talk about the race aspect, because if I'm if I'm black or brown and crying in the workplace because of something, are my tears looked at as, oh, you know, be easy, not be easy, but as in like have some sympathy because she's going through stuff, or is it looked at as she's crazy anyway, so don't even worry about it? And I just wanted to highlight that these waves that you're talking about, and going feeling high and feeling low, that it's different to bipolar, because bipolar, these ups and downs will happen on a months, years basis, but for BPD it's hours, days.
Yeah, that's why it's so difficult, because you don't even know how to explain it to other people that your emotion has changed this quick. With that, like I get so paranoid so easily. If a friend cancels on me last minute, I will just think they hate me. And there was also a guy who had the same thing, who got away with so much like bad behavior, and I'm not even blaming him, because like I know what BPD is like and I know what that can cause. But everybody found a way to justify his behavior, and the minute I said anything, it was over. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yeah, and that is again in terms of neurodivergence, that even more boys are diagnosed with ADHD and autism, like retro diagnosed with ADHD and autism. It's just that they had to cover it up much more, because if you are just, you know, one of the symptoms is risky behaviors in BPD. If you are a man and going out and gambling, maybe having unsafe sex, obviously not everybody does this, but other risky stuff, violence, those things are not as translatable for a woman to do, and the way she'll be received is different. So now I just want to ask about treatment, mentalization and dialectical therapy. So mentalization is just trying to put yourself in another person's mind, and dialectical means when you can look at things from different perspectives. And we've also had a question about whether you've had medicine for your BPD. So could you tell us about the treatments you've received?
I was put on the crisis team, and I had a home treatment team, and then I went on to a doctor who I would see every 3 months just for like half an hour. And that was just sort of to check like you haven't killed yourself. Or like that was just to, you know, have you thought about killing yourself, and you know, that kind of thing. And so I was on that, but during that whole period I was on a waiting list for DBT. And so I am now going to be receiving DBT starting in February. I had like a 4-week individual assessment with my DBT therapist. And then we had like a 4-week group assessment where like we got on Zoom, and they kind of described the two treatments. So they described mentalization and DBT. And then at the end, they would kind of come to their own opinion of what they thought that would suit us best, but then we could also say what we think would suit us best. And so we mutually decided that DBT was going to be the fit for me. I have like these sessions every week with my DBT therapist where we're just making pre-commitment things before DBT. So I have like different activities to do every week where I'm essentially making the commitment to really devote myself to this therapy, because the therapy is like really intense. I think it's an hour every week, and then group therapy every week, and then you also have access to your therapist on the phone like whenever you want. So that is like a really intense process. And so we've had to make some commitments now, and the commitments so far have just been like getting rid of stuff that you could use to self-harm. This week we were talking about the stuff that like the goals and the values that I want out of this therapy, um, which has been really, really helpful. And so yeah, that's so far the treatment thing. But I should say it's taken years, because I got diagnosed when I was 19 and I'm 23 now. And so um it's been a long time. And um I do really like sympathize with people who are still on the waiting list. Like, it is a really difficult thing, but I would say just to please like keep holding on, because it's so worth it. I know that I haven't started it yet, but even just knowing what I'm gonna get out of it is amazing.
And have you ever had medication?
Yeah, so I'm on Katanga. I personally would rather not be on it, if I'm being honest. But I think if it works for you, it works for you. I have another friend who's also on it, and um he's on it, and he'll like write a play in the night. It just makes him so focused. So it depends on the person.
Do you have any advice for anybody who might have watched this and might be thinking, I struggle with a bit of emotional regulation, and or anybody who might be earlier on in their BPD journey?
I started like, I don't do it every day, but I started just like journaling stuff, and you can't care about what's going on the page, you just have to do it. And it does really help. And then also just having, if you have somebody in your life that is like really lovely and empathetic, do talk to them, and do just like, even if you don't want to talk about what you're upset about, you could just be distracted, maybe try and find a creative outlet. Like, I've felt so much better ever since like starting to write music and stuff like that. Like, that has made me like, because I have an outlet, I have somewhere to put it, and it's not just staying inside me all the time.
And do you think that somebody can ever recover from BPD?
um so I've researched a lot on like YouTube and stuff, and I personally haven't found anyone that's like recovered, but I have found people that have, gone through DBT and have managed it better.
Fair enough. Okay, well, thank you so much for today's conversation. Thank you for being so open and vulnerable. I know that you would have really like touched a lot of people today, and hopefully this inspires somebody to, anybody who's on their mental health journey of any kind, to I think you've perfectly highlighted that we need to talk about it more in all different cultures, and really just have space for one another, because we've come on this world not to be an island, but to hopefully be accommodating to others and show real love even when it's difficult. So if you could tell us your socials, where my viewers can find you, if you want to.
I'm just on Instagram. I don't have a Twitter, but on Instagram I'm at Sindeezy, which is Sindeazy, but that might change soon.
Okay, all right then. Well, thank you so much. If you like this video, if you've liked it, comment down below anything new that you've learned, and make sure you subscribe so you can see the next episode. Bye.